Hello, Dell here again. I've spent the last 40 or 50 years enjoying the vehicles that I have had the pleasure to own through childhood, high school, college, and then many years raising my family. I think my dad instilled some of that excitement in me. He had several small businesses, which is what I have now in real estate business, commercial real estate business. But he had restaurants and even a car dealership. He helped me out a lot. A few months ago, I started tracking back to all the vehicles and realized that the count is up to 60. So I began to research them all and added up the Blue Book value and classic car sites and medium quality finish and things like that. Not 100% restored, but the values of these 60 cars is up at over $1.2 million. So I spent some time going through old photos, family videos, and I found most of the vehicles. And if I didn't find them, of course we have internet, and I was able to go online and find the same style, type, car, and even the same color. So it's worked out very well. It's amazing what we have on the internet. You can track go back to the engine sizes if you don't remember those. But it's nice being able to go back and then be able to share those memories with you. It gets a little challenging though, as I've got 60. You've got videos, photos, uploads. And I asked a friend of mine who's an editor of a local newspaper or magazine, and she suggested showing you them by vehicle type and doing a series of different videos. So here you go, take a look at them. Remember to hit like, comment about one of these vehicles that maybe you owned or had a story to share. I'd love to hear it.
Imagine you're 15 years old and you just get your driver's license permit and you say, Dad, what do I get to drive? And this is what you get, a 1978 Lincoln Town Car with a 460 horse motor, fully loaded out. And I mean, this car is just under 20 feet long, and it is a boat. But this was the first car I got to drive when I got my license. It's my dad's car, but I'm counting it as one of my 60 vehicles. I don't have the original pictures of these cars because it was so long ago. And anyways, this is a 1970 Buick Lesabre with a 350 engine. And it was my grandmother's, and she couldn't drive anymore, so she gave it to me so I can get back and forth to work and to high school. But that was a four-door, 350 engine, and quick story on that, I was out on a weekend one time and drank Crown Royal whiskey, and I still have not drank it because I got so sick on it. I still haven't drank it to this day. But anyways, that was a good car. It was a fun car to drive. 79, I lived with my sister over the summer, and I worked for a builder building houses, and two brothers, Jim and Herb Books, and Herb sold me this his family car. This is a 1973 Chrysler Imperial with a 7.2 liter engine. And it just ran out really nice. It was in really good shape. I think I bought it from him for like, I don't know, $400 or $500, and I drove it over the summer and part of the school year, and I ended up selling it for like $1,000 just to make some money. But this was a really nice luxury car at the time. I'm at Griffith High School the next year, and I buy this 1978 Ford Thunderbird with a 302 V8 in it. And this is not the actual one, because the actual one was actually a totaled vehicle. The back right quarter panel, tire all the way back to the bumper, was just completely shredded up, and it was in really bad shape, and it needed to be completely redone. but I bought it and drove it for a while, and then it ended up selling it to a body shop guy that was able to do all that work. I couldn't afford it. Anyways, this is a 1978 Grand Marquis Prom that I had. I was living over in on Klein Avenue in Griffith, Indiana, and it was actually my dad's car, but I took it to Prom my senior year. And that's me there. We took it, that's me and Julie and Brian and his friend Leanne. And we had a great time in that car, but it was very luxurious, like the Lincoln Town Car. So I didn't have too many luxury cars after that. This, jumping forward to 1987, I got married, and this was my wife and I's car. It's a 1982 Mazda 626 luxury, fully loaded out, sunroof. And took this to Columbus, Ohio. But I'm realizing in this video, it wasn't another 12 years before I had my next luxury vehicle, because I had trucks and just sedans and coupes. So here's the next one. When was your birthday?
July 5th, 2010.
2010, we went for a ride in the limousine. Andy, Steve,
I was there.
Chris.
And where did we go?
We went to the
Brick Store Pub.
I still have pictures from that day.
We still have pictures.
That was the best day.
Can I get those
We
pictures?
walk in and the table was right there.
And it was lit from the sky.
It was like on a chalice.
There was a skylight, and it was.
So there we're talking about this 1995 Lincoln Town Car with a 302 V8. I picked this up in a real estate transaction. That's another story. But I got it all cleaned up and running in tip-top shape, and I decided one day, let's take the guys and Andy for his birthday, and we went to the Brick Store Pub in Decatur and had a great time. During the short time I had this car, I was able to get, Melissa was 14, and took her and her friends for a little trip here for her birthday party. I even played chauffeur for a little while and drove them all around. We had a great time during the time we had this limousine.
It's a 2010 Chrysler 300.
So this is Derek's Chrysler 300, which is not part of the 60 vehicles that I own, but I've asked Derek to, although we don't have them anymore, I asked Derek to talk just briefly about two of his cars. The first one
It's a 1999 Lincoln Continental. It's a good car, drove really well. It's a V8.
yeah, that was the year. That's the bigger model. Here I'm going to put up a couple of pictures of it, but it's a 302 V8. This picture here, tell me about this where your Lincoln was.
That was at the Indiana, the soccer house we used to have, where all the guys they would come and hang out, and the whole soccer team at Indiana when we won a national championship.
So who are you playing with there?
With Evan Nolte. He played on UVA.
This is a 2012 Ford Taurus. I bought it in a couple years old in 2014. And drove it, put about 75,000 miles. It got just over 100,000 miles on it, and I drove it around quite a bit. And then I gave it to Melissa, my daughter, and she's been driving how long?
3 years.
3 years. And she's gotten married recently and is now at the University of Georgia. And how do you like it?
I love my car. It does good.
Love the car, it does good. Let's take a look at the inside. It's a nice dash feature, kind of like all the instruments. CD, full heated seats, leather. Very nice inside. So this is a 3.5 liter engine, and we had to do a couple of services to it. What's your favorite part about the car, Mal?
My heated seats.
heated seats. There you have it. A couple of things we had to do to it. We had an air conditioning problem that had a control module we had to replace on it. It was about $800, but all in all, it's a great
It's 2015, and we moved to Holly Springs, Georgia. Just Kelly and I. She had given the car she was driving to Derek, I think, one of the kids, to go off to college on. And so we searched for a car for her, and found this 2007 Lincoln Mkz with a 3.5 liter V6 engine. She didn't even drive it. She sat in it. It's so luxurious. She just bought it. It's an older car, but it only had 25,000 miles, and we've really enjoyed this car. Okay, so that's it for the quote-unquote luxury vehicles. I think it's worth mentioning that I found out during the research of values, although they're my favorite cars, these big boat luxury cars, they don't hold value over time. You can find these antiques now for relatively fair price, as opposed to these upcoming muscle cars that I'm about to transition into and share with you. The values of some of these fully restored muscle cars today can be as high as into the six figures. So it's interesting to see how the price variation goes with the age of the particular type of vehicle. So let's move on to muscle cars. But first I want to add one more luxury car that my friend Brian reminded me to add, this 74 Chrysler Cordoba. I had this back in the 80s. It had a 400 cubic inch engine and actually competed with cars like the, you might recall, the Cougar, the Tornado, the Thunderbird, the Riviera. It competed with those cars. I drove it for one summer and I fixed it up. However, I won't count it towards my 60 vehicles because my dad bought it for brother Dane, and he drove it after I drove it. He drove it off to college. So, early part of my senior year in high school in 1981, I purchased this 1973 Pontiac Lemans, bright orange. This is not the original one. The one I had was was so rusted out, the fenders flapped in the wind. In fact, I almost got in a fight. I remember this car because I almost got in a fight because I accidentally almost hit somebody, and he was a big football player in the parking lot. Anyways, that was a V. This car came with a V6 engine. I looked it up, and it was not the 350 engine. It was a V6 engine, so it wasn't very powerful, you can imagine. So this Lemans is considered a muscle car, but it had a V6 engine. Now this 1970 Olds Delta 88 may or may not be a muscle car, but I put it in muscle cars because it had a 455 V8 engine. I had this is not the actual one. The one I had was, it was rusted and it had snow tires on it, and I would stand on the brake with one foot, step on the gas with the other, and it would burn rubber with the snow tires and fill up smoke in the car. Just, I don't know, dumb kid. But anyways, that is that was a serious strong engine in that big car. In 1982, I moved on to Vincennes University in Indiana, and I acquired this 1963 Mustang. And it's considered a muscle car, of course, but these things had a little 289 engine in them, so it's, I don't know how you consider that a big muscle engine, but anyways, this is one of those cars that the value today of them restored can get up into the six figures. It's very surprising. So many people want these cars. I wish I still had it. Of course, the bucket seats on it were ripped up, but it was just a nice little car that I would take back and forth to Vincennes. I really enjoyed it. So that summer, I bought this 1973 Blue Cutlass. It had a 350 engine, just a great running car. All the interior dash, it was a white white interior, bucket seats, but all the interior header panels, the guy had put tassels on it, and he used thumbtacks in the vinyl and just basically ruined it. So I pulled it all apart, and I went to old Wild Bill's junkyard on Route 30 there in Maryville, Indiana, and went out in the back and talked to old Wild Bill and his guy named Kenny. And Kenny said, we ain't got none of that cars like that. And so I told him I'd been out there before and I saw the white interior Cutlass, and he said, yeah, well, go on back there. So I I took all the interior of that junkyard car, including one bucket seat, and I replaced it in this blue Cutlass. In fact, I found $40 under the bucket seat in the junkyard car. So he charged me like $50. So I think all in all it was a $10 cost for all that stuff. So I replaced all that and sold it later. Actually bought this next car. Same car, exact same car, but brown. I believe the interior was brown as well. And I remember driving that car for quite a while, and I had my friends in it, and I think my brother Dane, and we were driving in that car, and we were driving very close bumper to bumper with a group of girls. My friend Howard's, his girlfriend Beth now, and later became his wife. But anyways, they stopped quickly, and that car had terrible brakes, and I ran right into the back of them, dented their bumper up. And but anyways, that was a lot of fun back there with that car. So over that next summer, I lived with my sister Denise and brother-in-law Mike and their kids, and I had this 1970 Firebird. And this is actually an original picture that I had, but it's very distorted, so I took another picture off the internet here. But I remember Greg, my nephew Greg, their son, he was like 7 years old. If I'd come back and I'd change the rims or change the hubcaps on any car that I brought back, he'd point it right out to me. Did you change the hubcaps on that car? He knew exactly what it was. But anyways, that was a really nice car. I wish I had it today. Another one of those where you restore that Firebird and the value is just skyrockets to that six-figure number. But anyways. So that summer of 1982, 83, I bought this 1972 Mercury Cougar. It's a 351 Cleveland engine, another very good engine and one of my favorites. But this car was one of my favorites. And this is when I met Kelly, my now wife, and I didn't have a car just before that. I had a motorcycle, so I needed a car so I can go out on dates and stuff. But this is one of my favorite bucket seats and just a very fun car. So the summer of 1985, 86, I was home from Purdue, and I bought this 1980 Cutlass Calais. I don't know how it's pronounced. But I had this. I lived in a little duplex there near the railroad tracks off of 45th Avenue in Griffith, Indiana. And I had this car. It was really nice. It was a nice luxury, maybe a muscle car, I don't know. But it had a 4.2 liter V8 engine. And I really enjoyed it. It's nice white interior. This was the actual car. But I enjoyed this car for that summer. Then I traded it for this 1977 Cutlass Supreme, the same engine in it. It's a little bigger model, but I was talking recently with a friend of mine, old brother Ken. He's a friend of mine here in Roswell, Georgia, and he was in the building that we owned in Roswell. And I was talking to him about it, and he showed me a picture. He had the same car, same exact car, but his was blue. Here's a picture of it. But so we argue about the year, 75, 76. I believe this was a 77, but I could be a year off. But I really enjoyed this car. That engine though on this one had a valve that it had a knock in the engine that if you stepped on the gas. So I never ended up getting that fixed. I ended up selling that one. And I ended up making some money on that Cutlass. And I sold it and bought this 1975
Mustang Ghia. I actually had I had some pictures of all these cars, and that's the actual cars as well. But it had a V6 engine. I don't know if you consider that a muscle car, but I was not really a fan of that Mustang Ghia. But it ended up, it ran out nice, and I ended up selling that shortly thereafter. So I drove this car from Indiana to Atlanta. Was working in Atlanta on a first project down there, and this was 1973 Cutlass Supreme two-door with a 350 engine. I drove that for a couple of years, and then I sold it to a friend of mine. This is not the actual car. The actual car was not another one of those where the fenders just flapped in the wind. And in fact, the radiator overheated on it on our way from it to Atlanta. Anyways, I drove it for a couple of years, and then I sold it to a friend of mine, Mark, and he drove it for another 5 years. We called it the Green Bomb. That 350 engine just kept running and kept running. It's a great engine, of course, but that car was quite the rusted out Green Bomb. So keeping in with the 350 engine, we bought this sometime after that Cutlass. We bought this 1976 Camaro. It also had a 350 engine. This is not the actual one, but this is the orange color. They call it, the paint color is orange peeler. It's weird. But anyways, that's a really good running car. We bought this at an auction and only kept it for about a year. We had some trouble with the title, so we ended up selling that one and moving on to our next vehicle. This is the final for the muscle cars. It's a 2010 3-liter V6 Ford Fusion, and I bought it a few years back. Jake drove it for a while, then he gave it to Derek to drive, and now we currently have it, and Garrett is driving it. So it's a very it's a smaller car, but the engine is relatively large, and it is a very fast, high torque speed car. Jake originally tinted the windows and blacked out the rims. It almost looks like some people confuse it with a squad car. And that concludes this episode of My 60 Vehicles. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope that you'll share maybe a similar story for one of the vehicles that you've owned, or maybe experienced the particular vehicle with me over the years. I'd love to hear that, and remember to subscribe to my channel, my YouTube channel, hit like, and remember to watch the other 2 episodes of My 60 Vehicles right here on my YouTube channel, and I want you to have a fantastic day.